Greeting listeners and welcome to Roll of a Tangent episode 27. My name is Nikita Zuev and tonight I'm once again joined by my co-hosts Robert Gibson and XJ. Today we introduce a new author to our podcast, Robert Heinlein, whose works are best categorized as thought-provoking and fantastical. You may know him by the fantastical story and book, The Starship Troopers, that was turned into a motion picture. Tonight we shall examine the short story titled They. And here's the summary. Our protagonist, who remains unnamed throughout the story, is locked up in a mental asylum. He spends most of his time playing chess with the attending Dr. Hayward, refusing meals and grasping at thoughts on consciousness, the self, and of the universe around him. The patient believes he is living in a simulation, specifically constructed to keep him sedated. He regards civilization as insane and explains its intricacies as further proof that he is being deceived. All the minute details and even the broad sweep of our history are lies to him, created to keep him off the trail. In other words, his condition is an extreme case of solipsism, the psychological view that the self is all that can be known to exist and everything else is false. Distrusting everything he is told about the world, only in dreams does he feel he has escaped and learned the real truth. And here we are given a fragmentary impression of some higher reality where a powerful being known as the Glaroon is playing some sort of a game with him. But when he awakes, various distractions cause him to forget the vision, and he's back in our normal world, which he regards as a prison of deception and lies. Formerly, he has trusted his wife, Alice, whom he had regarded as being as real as himself, an equal, until an accident convinced him that the mask had slipped. Now he makes it clear that he no longer wishes to see her. Nevertheless, Alice does visit him and makes a powerful emotional plea for him to accept that the world is the reality it purports to be, and not manifestation of some scheme to fool him. Through sheer force of will, he refuses her tempting offer of love and care. The story's twist comes at the very end, where it is revealed to us, though not to the unnamed protagonist, that he is in fact right. Dr. Hayward is the Glaroon who chastises its subordinates for letting the veil slip. We are left to wonder whether our hero will escape this mind prison as the cracks in the infrastructure are growing stronger by the end of the tale. That is They. Robert, what do you think about the story?
I'm a great admirer of this story, and there's so many things one can say about it, about its genuinely sort of I won't call it creepy, but it has the sort of classic conceptual breakthrough idea of some of the best science fiction, where you suddenly realize that reality is much wider and greater than you thought it was, and also very much different from what you thought it was. I would pick out one particular point: the theme of being interrupted comes out very powerfully in the story. You think you've got the grasp of what's really happening, and then something interrupts you. Like, for example, in this story, it's somebody wakes you and distracts you immediately upon waking, so you forget the dream in which you saw everything as it really was. It reminds me of the incident in our literary history where the notorious person from Porlock interrupted Coleridge in the middle of his writing Kubla Khan, so he couldn't finish the poem because this chatterbox from the neighbouring village distracted the thread of his inspiration. The other thing I point out before going back to my colleagues for their views is the old joke about that we've all heard about, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, is really literally true here. The protagonist is paranoid, but he's right to be paranoid.
Indeed. XJ, what do you think about the story?
Okay, so for me, this is a very special story because it is one of my very rare contributions to the podcast. It's my suggestion. But quite aside from that, so first of all, Robert A. Heinlein, I need to point out, is one of those authors that don't write something without exploring a theme behind it. He's of that generation of science fiction authors that tend to explore a theme, and if you would read his stories, it generally comes out. There is a very strong theme of a style of governing in Starship Troopers, for instance, and you can see him exploring the consequences of all that. Quite aside from that, so first of all, I'll say what's terrible about the story. The story structure is really bad. Where it's if you're looking for like a 3-act structure where there's a beginning, middle, and end, you won't find it here. There's none of that drama that you would associate with a usual story. There is nothing about character development, I should say, and the ending is very. A story like this, you basically only have 3 endings that you can go to. One is he's right. 2, he's wrong. 3, it is ambiguous, and that's it. So there isn't really a lot of directions you can go. You can push the story to. So the ending turns out to be very predictable. However, that's not really where the strength of the story is. I find that the depiction of, first of all, the depiction of the mental outlook of the it's a really good description of paranoia. It's beautiful, man. It's like I was reminded of A Beautiful Mind when I was reading it, and that movie also has a very good depiction of paranoid schizophrenia. I think that is the actual medical term for it. The audience don't know for sure that the 3 figures in I don't quite remember who the show is about. I can't remember the mathematician that it was about, but you only understood that he is seeing these people in his mind, and it didn't exist for anyone else until towards the very end. And it's a very beautiful description of the story of the mental landscape of somebody who is suffering from that. And there is also a lot of philosophical stuff woven into it. I'm gonna read from a passage in the book. So here it is. From a logical standpoint, the whole world might be a fraud perpetrated on everybody, but logic meant nothing. Logic itself was a fraud, starting with unproved assumptions and capable of proving anything. So That's actually spot on, because if we think about what is the most powerful thing we have in the world right now, it's science. We are sitting right here talking to each other because of the power of science. But metaphysically speaking, how are we doing science? We start with the assumption that the world is empirical, that we can observe and run experiments on it, and then come to a certain arrive to a certain truth about the state of the world through experimentation and observation. But that is an assumption. What if we can't run experiments on something? And this is something from like a Lawrence Krauss lecture that I watched a long time ago. We all know that the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light, and then at some point, we won't be able to see the stars anymore. This will be billions of years in the future, and once we don't see any of the when we can't observe the stars anymore, how will we know for sure that the stars are there? How will we know anything about the nature of the universe? Right now, we can observe things because light can still reach us. But once it goes all the way out there, then we can't really learn anything about the universe anymore based on science. So yeah, the entire short story is pretty much riddled with that, and that is why I really like the story, man.
Right. So, what about you, Nikki?
So how do I put this in the best possible way? I wish I liked the story. I really do. Because I see what it is trying to do. I like the way it tries to portray itself. I find the premise and the twists themselves intriguing. But all this philosophical stuff grinded it to a major halt. To me, it felt like the story could have been like 5 pages shorter and nothing would have been lost. Because it feels to me like the philosophical stuff goes over and over the same points from maybe some different perspectives, but in the sense that it just keeps going over the same ideas that the man is struggling with, and it was just at some point when the same sort of points were raised for a third time. If I was reading it for real, I think I would put it down. So if I wasn't like reading it for the thing, because if somebody is like telling me the same point in a conversation in a bar, that's it. I'm not talking to this person the entire night anymore. Because it's like, what is this? Is this a broken record? Are you okay, man? Like, why are you telling me the same thing? Like, I'm not stupid. I get it. Right. Okay. And then they tell you it again. Yeah.
So basically, you felt like me in the City of Skulls.
Yeah, but you felt like that at the beginning, right? Like I felt like that in the middle. So for me, it like collapsed in the middle. Like the beginning was okay. It was a bit clunky when it comes to the dialogue. The dialogue didn't really feel that much like that believable. Let's put it that way. But it was fine. Like it's 1941 when this was written, right? Like I don't expect it to be massively, amazingly written when it comes to what's it called, dialogue, but yeah, it's, how do I say, you gave it such high praise, both of you, before we began the what's it called? The analyzation of the thing, and before I ever read it, and I kind of felt bad about not liking it. I was like, I must be reading it wrong. Maybe I have the wrong version.
That's interesting. Why do you feel bad?
Because you like it so much, and I thought like, well, okay, if they like it, I guess I'm not getting something. But then I tried it again. I was like, no, this just sucks. Like I can't do this. I got to the end of it. The ending is cool. I like that at the end we're like, yeah, his paranoia was real, and you should be afraid. That's pretty cool. That's a good ending to what seems to be like a horror story. And I like the idea that it was like the world was glitching, like it was raining and then it stopped raining. That's a cool detail as well. But the majority of the story is focused on this philosophical dilly-daddling about the same points over and over, really tired points that by the end it's like a tire on a car that's never been changed, and now it's grinding to the metal. And I'm just like, we can't move on. Like, we need to change the tire, and it's not changing. We just keep talking about the same shit. Yeah, it really, really disappointed me in that area. I felt like all of this philosophical stuff was. In Russian, we have a saying "натянуто на уши," which means like something that has been taken so far, like something has been like your pants have been taken so far up your body that they're reaching your ear, stretched out. Too terrible in that sense. The writing itself also didn't really spark that much joy in me. It was fine. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't bad. But because of that, because of this whole constant deep diving into the same points, yeah,
So to you, the story was repetitive, and that's why you don't like it, or is it the philosophy that you don't see the point of?
Well, the philosophy was pretty basic. That's anyway, but the fact that it gets repeated so many times is probably what kills it for me.
What about you, Rob? Did you find any depth to the? Well, honestly, I wouldn't call it philosophy at all. It's a very basic restatement of I'm gonna butcher his name, Descartes.
Yeah, Descartes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very basic restatement of Descartes. I think therefore I am, and blah blah blah. Except in this particular story, of course the paranoia that he had is very, very real. So do you find any depth in the story at all?
Yes, although I can understand Nikki's points, I wouldn't actually apply them to this story. I can imagine reading a story and coming to the same conclusions as Nikki does, but I wouldn't apply them to this particular story, which, after all, is only 18 pages long. So there's
felt like 50. Sorry, go on.
There's not actually room in such a short story to carry out the character development and all that some people might wish for, but I don't think any of that's necessary. To me, the recursive aspects of the tale, the circling round to get to the same point again and again, are what it has to be that way if it's portraying, as it does portray, the trapped nature of the patient's thoughts. He is like somebody walking round and round a cell and trying to get out, and in this case it's a metaphysical cell as well as a literal one. And there's enough variety in the way he does it, to me, to make it continually interesting, perhaps like a piece of music which has an underlying theme, but the composer plays with that theme and does variations on it so that the ear is continually satisfied. And that's my reaction. I think that we all bring equipment of our own, psychological equipment, to stories, and we each have different psychological equipment, and that means that, well, it means two things. First of all, it means that you can't expect everybody to like the same stories, and the second thing, which is less obvious than that, and which doesn't get said, is that the people who appreciate a story have always got the advantage over the people who haven't, because although you can say about an objective, a so-called objective fact, look, I think something exists, and no one says I don't think it does. If you're talking about the pleasure that is experienced on reading a story, then that pleasure is the only datum that matters, really. So you can't say to somebody, oh, well, you just thought you were enjoying that story. In fact, you weren't really, because it's not that good. You see what I mean? Whereas you can say the other way around, oh, you didn't enjoy that story because you didn't plug your brain in the right way, or you didn't bring it to it the right assumptions, or that your running commentary of mental associations as you were reading it wasn't fitted to this particular story.
I wouldn't be so bold as to say you could tell somebody you didn't enjoy something because you did something wrong, just as the way you wouldn't say something, you enjoyed something because you did something wrong. I think both of these are too I don't think that's right.
No, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure you wouldn't say that. But it's an interesting point that not so much connected to this story, but in my long life, I've seen plenty of people, heard plenty of people who, for example, don't get the Lord of the Rings. They say, oh, what's all this stuff? Nothing to it. And the thing is that it's too late for that. As soon as one reader has enjoyed the book and appreciated it profoundly, then that's that. I mean, that's, that puts the book up there. That's proof, really, all the proof that's needed that it's a great book.
Well, I will confess to finding the very first book of Lord of the Rings, anyway, to be quite underwhelming. It was a very long travelogue, and I'm like, okay, very good description of the countryside, but can we get on with the story, please? Yeah. Was my feeling.
Yeah, but you see, I think that's probably, well, not probably, it's definitely your fault. I mean, that is to say, there's something you're not doing right when you're reading the book. Now, that doesn't matter.
Absolutely true. I probably hadn't...
What baloney?
That's probably very true. I probably haven't smoked enough weed when reading the book. No, I'm just kidding.
So that can apply to all sorts of literary themes, forms of literature. There are some things which I never read, and I'm not going to read them either. And I'm sure that's because I don't read them the right way, or I wouldn't read them the right way if I tried. But that's an important thing to bear in mind.
I mean, if we all like the story, then I think this podcast will be very dull.
We all liked Lost Hearts, and I think that's one of our best episodes. Because we all liked it for different reasons, and we had a very good discussion. This time, I don't... what's it called? I have a lot to say, just none of it is good, and I don't know if I should say it.
I think you absolutely should. Why wouldn't you?
Well,
It's not like Robert A. Heinlein is gonna come and get you, or the Glaroon.
No. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of repercussion. It is more about Pushkin and many Russian authors had the conception of the idea of if you don't have something nice to say nothing.
I disagree.
For sure. So I think that is in essence that is very wrong. You should say when something is wrong. However, there is a sparkle of truth of like they're saying that something wrong to somebody, and then there's destroying them, right? Like systematically killing them. And my fervent Russian heart, it only has two modes. It has the mode of grace and the mode of absolute indiscriminate anger.
Oh, that should be interesting. Go for it.
But first, my indiscriminate anger will be what's it called? Pushed towards this ridiculous point that I think Robert made, that you could read something wrong. And that's why you didn't enjoy it. I disagree with this completely. I think that this is all about the mind of a person. There is no way to make somebody read something again the right way, so that has a different impact. Hold on.
Yes,
the only way that you could read something wrong is it would be that you could read something then right and then enjoy it, and that's impossible. Which means that this definition does not work. So
it does.
How? Okay, if you can read it wrong, that means that you can then reread it right, and then you would enjoy it. That's the only way how wrong and right works.
No. Some people, like I can't sing. Some people can't read some stories.
Yeah, but you can learn to sing, and then you'll sing right. That is a possible feature of your brain. It is not possible to reread.
My brain, no.
It is. It is all about determination. There is. It just like so. What's it called? Just like people, for example, with dyslexia, it is incredibly hard to force their brain to perceive the things on the page the way people without dyslexia do. But it is possible. There is a what's it called? If you put the grueling hours in, if you dedicate their time to it, you can what's it called? Not fix, but you can mitigate their dyslexia where it's not apparent. Same with singing. If you have enough dedication, you can sing right. You just can. It is a skill that you can learn. You cannot learn reading something right after you read it wrong, as you say. It is not a skill that is developed.
Have you seen that movie Citizen Kane?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Well, there you go. There's in that movie there was somebody who couldn't sing no matter how
That's fiction. It's not real. You can sing. It's the same with anything. If you're really dedicated, you can do it. I am a living proof of that.
That's so sad. I mean,
Really?
I'm sure there are things that you can just pick up without really having to grind your nose through.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not talking about everything. Just breathing. No, I'm talking about a specific skill, and that is being patient enough to sit down and read.
Life's too short though to do that in some cases. I mean, we only live a few decades,
It is true. I'm not saying this is not my argument, however, right, Robert? My argument is, in order for someone to read something in the wrong way, it would automatically mean that there is a way to teach them how to read it right, and that is not possible. So all it is is me disagreeing with your definition. I would define it as. Sorry, actually, let me finish so I don't forget. I would define it as missing the story beats, not reading something wrong, but not being immersed within it. And you can't re-immerse yourself in something once you've don't click with it. Because
that's more or less what I'm saying, actually.
Yeah, but all I'm arguing with you is the definition. Saying the word wrong is what's bad about the way you say it. That's all I've been arguing against.
Well, Well, I mean, it is. Well, all right. If you don't like the word wrong,
Well, it
find,
sends the
find a
wrong message. It
key.
sends the message that you could somehow teach somebody to read it right the next time they read it, but that's impossible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So I actually come down on Robert's side here. And
Well,
Well, always, I mean, it's not
although I don't know if what I'm about to express is actually what Robert is thinking about.
okay.
It's not just books or stories or whatever that you read. It's also movies and music and other stuff. Like you appreciate them differently when you are at a different point in your life.
That's what I'm saying.
So in that sense, you can be taught to read the story right, but it's through time. Is not by somebody telling you this, that, or the other. You feel how you feel, and that's not going to change. But as you go through, as we move through in life, we mature. Well, not really mature, but we change because of the different circumstances that we experience. And then certain stories which may seem dreary, boring, terrible to us takes on a different shape altogether when we revisit it. And one really big example I would give is Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is a very, very is a classic in Chinese literature, and it is a grand one. It's set in the warring is a period. Every era in China, there's always a warring state. There's always a warring state sometime in China's history, but it's set in this particular warring state era. And then the first third of the book was for a young person is tremendously exciting. There's a lot of battles going on and everything, and then it starts getting really dreary in the middle, and then in the last third is just boring as hell. But then when revisiting it as a middle-aged adult, I started to appreciate the second part and the third part a lot more, because the second part and the third part is really talking. It has a lot of struggles that you would go through when you're trying to manage a lot of a very dicey situation and a lot of people at the same time. It starts to sing a different tune. It started to sing a different tune to me once I've gotten to the point in my life where I actually understood how shitty it is to deal with people in general. Yeah, so I think it is possible to read a story the wrong way. I definitely read the story the wrong way or at least the second and third part of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. That's my take.
I take no responsibility. I think the story fucking sucks. Sorry, go on, Robert.
I was just going to say, I think you, Nicky, you don't like the word wrong. That's the only thing.
Yeah, because I don't believe in the idea of what's it called, that you can do an act that's connected with creativity incorrectly. I think that is very not very intellectual to see it from that perspective.
Well, what is actually happening when somebody likes a book and somebody else thinks it's rubbish? What exactly is happening?
What is transpiring? Okay, well, I mean, okay, it depends on a lot of things, right? So there is a certain amount of inexperience, and I will explain to you this thusly. When I was younger, I used to read things that were new to me, because I am a new existence in this reality, and because of that I haven't experienced a lot of cliches, a lot of ideas, a lot of good dialogue. So because I am fresh out of the pot, for me almost no book at that time could have been bad, right? So that's the first way of somebody like that could be enjoying anything. And it is not about reading right or wrong, but it is the inexperience of the user of the mind. When they read something, anything could seem amazing, right? While somebody who's been reading for 30 years and he's seen all of these plot points before, they would read the same thing that this young child has read and think like, really, you enjoy that? The thing that I've heard 500 times? It's terrible. It basically reuses everything that I've read before. But for that child who's never experienced any of those books or any of those stories, there is nothing for them to compare it to. So of course they would enjoy it way more than somebody who has so much more experience. So the more you read, the less you like things. That's in my opinion, a thing that transpires, because you get an acquired taste for these things and that things. It is the way you are both transpiring. It is if I were to take it to a different thing, would be like somebody is saying that like you chewed your steak wrong. That's why you don't like medium rare. How is that possible?
Sorry, can you? I'm not getting the analogy.
So you're saying you read something wrong. That's why you didn't enjoy the story. And I'm saying that's, to me, that equates to you didn't like the steak because you ate it wrong. It's insane to me, this idea.
I mean,
well, actually, foods are not a bad analogy. I've found in my long life that there are some things which I really didn't like eating when I was a child.
But that doesn't mean that you ate it wrong. It's just that your tastes have changed from being a child to being an adult. It has nothing to do with being right or wrong. If you're considering it as right or wrong, that's wrong in its core.
Well, I mean, I use wrong not in a moral sense, but in the sense that whatever I was doing, it was the wrong. It was
incorrectly. I understand what you mean, and I still disagree with that. I have not misunderstood your definition. No. I understand it as incorrectly, and I don't like the word incorrectly in this. In this current analogy.
So how about the word ineffectively then?
Effectively is much better. Yes, ineffectively is
all
way
right.
better.
There's such a way as reading a book effectively, and such a way as reading a book ineffectively. By reading it in such a way that you don't get it. And some people, at some times in their lives, as XJ says, it's always changing, read it in such a way that it's virtually a foregone conclusion that they won't get it or won't appreciate it. But that leaves the person who does read it effectively as being a greater authority on that particular book than the person who doesn't get it. So it's not an equal.
But by saying this, you're also removing the idea of personal taste, the way you have just described ineffectively.
Because there's a spectrum between just not getting into the story and then completely missing the point. I mean, so I'm sure I missed the point when it came to Lord of the Rings, like the first book of the. I totally didn't get it. I don't know why it is necessary to go into such extensive and, to me, painful details on the surrounding countrysides of the Shire. It's like I can definitely see how I might have approached Lord of the Rings in a way that is not optimal as Rob would use it, and then I ran out of patience with the book. So that's basically that. I think that is what probably Rob means. Am I right?
Oh,
But
also,
at the same time, like you could. No, sorry that I interrupted you, Robert. Let me
sorry.
just make this quick point.
Yeah.
At the same time, I also attribute that you could not like a story or a book because you have experience of reading so many other works that this particular work, when you read it, it feels so tired to you or so uninspired compared to everything else that you've read that you would not enjoy it. That is also a possibility, and that's you not reading the thing wrong. That's just the work being uninspiring. It's also a possibility. It doesn't have to be that you read something ineffectively that you don't like it. Some things are terrible. I've read fan fiction. They're terrible. It's not that like there's no redeeming qualities in most of them.
Yeah. I do see that. I do see that point. It's this, and also you mentioned also matters of taste, and we're getting into very deep waters here, aren't we? It's very, 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 very difficult to know what exactly is going on. Well, it's impossible, in fact, to know what exactly is going on about matters of taste. I could criticize a lot of popular music because I don't see anything very musical in just thump, 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 thump. Now, maybe I'm missing something. Do you see what I mean? But
Yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
know.
Yeah, like in this particular manner, when it comes to they, because I respect both of you as authors and thinking men, I can foresee within my mind that I read this story ineffectively instead of it just being trash. It is definitely possible, but that is only, and I'm willing to conceive that only because I know that both of you like to read good stories. So there is a
I mean, I'll just straight up say, like I already said straight right in the beginning, like the story structure of Day itself is pretty bad. There isn't anything in that regard. As a dramatic story, it's yeah, I rate it as being pretty low. To
right, but
me,
you. Oh, sorry, you weren't. Sorry,
to me, the I so what I really appreciate about the story first off, like I said, but I'll just repeat it in different words. Is just how adroit the this depiction of a mentally ill patient might be. The twist at the end is completely like unsurprising to me. The only thing that I was watching out for was whether the one thing that sets him off and told him that all of this is a lie was believable enough or not. And when it came to when so he was the protagonist in question was like, there's rain here, and then he went up to the windows on his second level, and then all of a sudden out the other side is a sunny day, and I was like, okay, fair. That's a good enough that's a solid enough thing to base his paranoia on. And I was like, okay, that's not cop out, it's not cheap, and fair enough. But the rest of the story structure itself is just not. Like I said, I wouldn't rate it very high. But the depiction of the mental landscape of a very ill patient, I think is fantastic. It's very real, very
I will
very, very true to form, and I appreciate that. And the philosophical stuff about it, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cheap pop. It's nice that it's there. I don't think anyone past the age of 35 would take it seriously, but it's more than just like it does give it some depth, which I also appreciate. Yeah.
I would not disagree with the fact that the feeling and the like the overall grandeur of mental illness is not portrayed well in the story. I would not say that at all. I would concede that it is done quite well. That part I will agree on. And it is not the story structure that unnerves me. But, well, actually, maybe it is the story structure because of all of this philosophical stuff that keeps getting regurgitated and repeated throughout the story, which makes the story like twice as long as it should have been. That's kind of my biggest issue with this entire piece, is that the points stop being interesting once it's the same paranoia being examined.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but
no problem.
just to riff off that point, that's actually why I religiously avoid trying to make a point in anything I write, because it's very tricky. When
you have to. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, when an author starts out with a point that he wants to push onto his readers and audience, he has to do it. It has to be done. It's a very tricky thing to manage, and it usually comes across heavy-handed. And in this particular instance, I guess to you, it was done in a very heavy-handed manner enough that it turns you off. Yeah.
Let me. Yeah, you're exactly right. Actually, let me show my impervious and unstoppable anger towards this piece in a second. So first, we have this. Robert, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No, I'm all ears.
Okay. All right. Good. Finally, no, I'm kidding. So the first moment when he talks to Haywood, and they play chess, and he is trying to convince him, yeah, everything's fine, everything's real. I'm like, okay, all right, cool, got it. And then the guy plays a violin piece to be like, this is what reality is all about. And he's like, yeah, that's okay, whatever, maybe you could have done, you've got time now, maybe you can become a violinist. And then he thinks about how nothing is real ever again, and then he does it again. And then there's the discussion with the, what's it called, the attendant who comes over to him, and he's like, hey, let's go do a movie night. And he's like, no, I don't want to go, and it's not going to exist because I'm not going to be there, which is a clever thing. But then there's like 3 more paragraphs where he discusses this point, and I'm like, you've made your point. It was awesome once you had this conversation, and now you killed it because you keep going on about it 5 paragraphs later, and you just need to stop at some point. The sequence keeps going back to his fears, and his fears all come to the same point. While the philosophical words are restructured and said in a different way, then it continues to be the same point anyways, even if it's said in a different light and explored in a different way. If you explore an idea more than 3 times in a story from the same perspective of the same character, you are not just in dangerous waters. You are in a situation where you are basically, you are leaving the only way that it could in any way, shape, or form be good is if your writing is immaculate. If your writing is George R. Martin level, where every sentence is interesting to read, even when the guy talks about Daenerys having constipation. The guy writes, one thing you can't take away from him is the guy writes really in a beautiful style. And if your style is not beautiful and you keep making the same points, coming back to the idea that you said, like the structure, right? Like the structure is wonky on its own, but then you also have like the fact that he just keeps talking about the same stuff, just in different words, really displeases me. Yes, well, did you want to say something?
I've just found the bit you're talking about, Nikki. It's movies tonight, sir, the attendant went on. Wouldn't you like to go? Dr. Haywood said you could. No, thank you. I prefer not to. I wish you would, sir. He noticed with amusement the persuasive intentness of the attendant's manner. I think the doctor wants you to. It's a good movie. There's a Mickey Mouse cartoon. You almost persuade me, Joe, he answered with passive agreements. Mickey's trouble is the same as mine, essentially. However, I'm not going. They need not bother to hold movies tonight. That's the first mention of that idea. Oh, there will be movies in any case, sir. Lots of our other guests will attend. Really? Is that an example of thoroughness, or are you simply keeping up the pretense in talking to me? It isn't necessary, Joe, if it's any strain on you. I know the game. If I don't attend, there's no point in holding movies. There we are. That's the end of that bit.
Yeah, but he continues to talk about how he feels loneliness and how this doesn't exist and how all of this is all a ploy. He doesn't talk about this particular movie night thing, but the continuation of the fact that like I'm lonely and everything sucks and this is all like a prison of mine and nothing is real continues on from that point.
Well,
It's
yeah,
not about
that's
exactly the
what it's
movies.
about,
Well, I'm saying, Robert, that the story could be twice as short if you cut this all out, and it's unneeded. You could have skipped to the next day, and you know, I think it would even be more effective if we just saw like little windows into the inside of this horrible existence, and you could have each of those instances being separated by just 1 or 2 paragraphs. This is the way I would do it. So you would have these ideas that days go by and things don't change and everything's the same, right? And then you go on to the next day, and now with this new thing that has just happened to him, he has a thought about that, and then you move on to the next day, and
well, I think
now it's his
really
one.
that would really be. I mean, I'd start getting bored then. I think this is more the technique of One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, where you squeeze all the point you can out of one fairly short slice of time, and I think it works very well, actually, in my opinion.
Well, didn't you say you would be bored by it? Oh, I'm confused now. Which one?
No,
What
I'm
do you
saying
mean?
the way Heinlein does this, it doesn't bore me. But if he went on giving glimpses of this, that, and the other, and varying it over a period of days, I think I might get bored. I'm comparing Heinlein's short 18-page story, which only happens in one day, although there's flashbacks of thought, with One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Which,
Was it one day?
I don't
Yeah.
think it was one day. It is weeks that go by in the simulation, is it not? I'm pretty sure, anyways.
I'm
I don't
pretty
think
sure.
this is happening.
I think there is at least a day I think at least a day had passed.
A day or two for sure,
Yeah.
but it's. I mean, to be honest, my
Well,
perception
anyway,
of that story is
minor point. Please go
Yeah,
on, Robert.
well, I've made the point. I think that it's
that my fix would make it more boring. Is what.
I think it would.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah,
I
that's fair.
don't know. I
Okay,
don't know
I'll
for
give you,
sure.
I'll give you a different way to fix this fucking shit.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about it because I hate it so much. Right. So the story itself starts with our protagonist having this chess play. And then there's the situation with the attendant, and then there's the, like his constant wallowing, and then there is finally the confrontation with the wife, and then we have the reveal of like, oh, this is all actually true, which is, I think, the good part of the story, the ending, because then the story ends. No, okay, because the reveal itself is done in a fun way. So I would swap stuff around a little bit. I would have the attendant come in first. I would not have the doctor be the first person to talk to him, because the doctor is a much more powerful figure than just some attendant. I would start real slow introducing these ideas. If the story started with like him just saying completely like this would put me in the mind, oh, this guy is a lunatic. Because when he's talking to the doctor, there's these glimpses that this man is intelligent. He's playing chess. He's playing on a violin. He's showing that his like high velocity is going on, right? So I don't believe that any of this is actually like his fault. Something is wrong. But if it started with the attendant, I would not believe a single thing that would be happening in the story after. I would think that this guy's imagining that he's playing chess. I would think many different things. But if you start with the doctor, with that whole section, everything else looks way worse afterwards. It is a very powerful scene, and it overshadows everything else for me. So because what's it called? Because like a really big professional, the guy who's leading his case is involved. right? And honestly, the doctor doesn't seem to be so sophisticated. So we could hide this really well if we swap some stuff around. By having the attendant be there first and have this discussion, you would really enter this guy's brain into the idea, he's a narcissist, he doesn't believe anything, okay, he's crazy. And then you would move on to the doctor. And now, however this dude precedes the doctor doesn't matter to you. So you would be actually on the side of the doctor at this point, because you saw how this patient is acting with the attendant. Well, you're not going to put the show on anyways because I'm not going to be there. What an asshole, right? Like you would be on the side of the people treating him. And then the what's it called? The actual you're not agreeing with me. Actually, I keep seeing you being baffled. Go on.
No, I think you've got something there, actually, Nikki. I think you've got something there. It's changing it round so that the visit of the attendant happens first. Yeah, I think that would enhance the story. I still think it's good anyway, but I mean, what you're saying might make it better. I'm not starting off from the same position of being dissatisfied with the story, but I do admit that it might improve if you did that,
because then you don't believe anything that this guy is experiencing. All of his experiences can be counted as, well, this man is crazy, so of course he's going to perceive this doctor as not as smart as he is, and so on and so forth. Right. And you could make these, like, if I was reading it and the doctor episode was second with the attendant, I would actually think that the violin didn't happen, the chess thing didn't happen. This guy was just probably on his bed talking to the doctor and being a snarky asshole to him, right? This guy's just imagining being more clever than the doctor, because that's what a lot of narcissists do. They sort of imagine in their mind, like this would be a very hyper-realistic way of doing it, obviously, like imagining that you're playing chess with this person, right? But it would be a good way to showcase further, further deterioration of the mind that at the end doesn't actually exist, because at the end we find out that that he is right. So we get double subversion.
I mean, the changing the story structure around like that might actually make it better. I maybe. However, I think so I'm not sure what mental issue you think the protagonist suffers from. You said narcissism?
Well, no. I'm saying that somebody reading would be like, wow, this guy is showcasing narcissistic traits like, I'm not going to go there because it doesn't exist. Right? I'm not saying that that's what he's suffering from. I'm more saying like that would be your experience. Before you dive in deeper into understanding that he doesn't believe that anything is real, if you have that interaction, you have an automatically negative perception of the protagonist. And that's what the story really needs to fool you that this isn't happening.
Well,
you have to be on the side of the doctor, not the side of the protagonist. But from the beginning, you are on the side of the protagonist. Go on.
I mean, maybe... well, I mean, maybe, I don't know, because when I read the story, it was very clear to me that it came out very clear to me that the mental landscape is that of somebody suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and people with paranoid schizophrenia isn't necessarily low in intelligence. Some of them are very highly intelligent, like the guy in A Beautiful Mind.
For sure, I'm not saying that.
So when I approach a story, to me, it feels to me like whether we swap it around to having the attendant first, so that you'll be on his side or that side, or not, and won't hit with me, I feel, because I'm approaching the story with I would say a fairly decent layman's understanding of what paranoid schizophrenia is. So I don't know. I think it really depends on. I guess we go back to where we're starting off when we read the story. It's like, to me, I find the whole the repetitive structure of the story to be the protagonist's way of working out some solution to his problem. And I find when I'm trying to solve a problem, I tend to think in pretty much the same manner, in the sense that I am going over the question. I'm going over the question over and over again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, but you may be right that restructuring the story in that particular manner would hit better with a lot of other people. Yeah.
I think the only reason you agree with me is because Robert began to agree with me. Honestly, I think you would have not agreed.
If I disagree with you, rest assured, I'll tell you straight to your face.
I am only jabbing you. Actually, please don't take it seriously. I respect your opinion. I think in this instant, all right. So my mother is a psychologist,
mm-hmm.
And I've lived in a house where a certain individual overanalyzes everybody. So when you experience what it's like talking to a real psychologist on a daily basis, perhaps that is why when I looked at Dr. Hayward and the way he was interacting with the protagonist, I knew almost immediately that this guy's not a real psychologist. This guy is
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So thank you. So to me, the restructuring also helps with that, because you can't trust the protagonist anymore after that first interaction with the attendant. That's why I made such a hard point on it. Not that you can't trust, you don't want to trust him because he's not nice, right? Because he's
fair enough.
Creating traits, right?
Fair enough.
But it's a tired point.
No, I mean, that's absolutely right. Heinlein could have leaned more heavily into the what do you call that? Unreliable narrator trope. Yeah. But I guess he chose the way he wrote this for some reason, I guess. And maybe that's just because he wants to push a point. And like I said, I think authors should be very careful when they're trying to push a point.
You're definitely right about that. I will tell you something, though. When it comes to the quiet moments on page... On the page right after the conversation with the doctor and right before he talks to his wife, there's 3 or 4 paragraphs that I think are written brilliantly and written so that you would exactly feel the feeling of loneliness and the feeling of being isolated and the feeling of mental illness creeping up on you. I will give the story that there are moments, these really powerful ones, where he truly created, at least for me, the feeling of oh yeah, this man has experienced something really, really strong and inescapable, and it put a little bit of dread in me, I will say, but it does not save it for me, unfortunately. I really, as I said at the beginning of our whole discussion, it saddens me that I don't like it because I see where it was going, but.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't, because it makes for a lively conversation in the podcast.
That's true. No, it's more
That's true.
I know that Robert Heinlein has done really good work. I've read Starship Troopers. And I really like Starship Troopers. I can't, for the life of me, imagine that the same person wrote both of these things.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right, I think we're past an hour, so
yeah, sorry.
I mean, I feel like this podcast, this particular episode, can keep going, but all good things must come to an end. So,
Like my impervious rage. Yes.
well, I don't know. Maybe you want to hold on to that. So, any last words?
Well, I give it 3 out of 10.
Cool. An honest grade, and that is a good one. What about you, Rob?
I would give Starship Troopers 3 out of 10.
Oh, can we please do Starship Troopers then? Okay. There we go. Another fight, another battle in the future. I'm so tired. All right. What would you give this story, though?
Who?
Well,
Rob? Yeah?
Yeah, Rob
I'd
just
give it
said.
about 9.62 out of 10, actually.
9.62. I really like the decimal points. It's very well considered. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. All right. Well.
Okay, well, for me,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna rate it, but I would read it again. I have. What I will say though, in closing, is I am very much reminded of that thing that Rob kept repeating, that one can forgive a lot in a story if the author has done one thing really well, and I think that would be a very honest description of how I received this particular story, because I did forgive a lot just because the depiction of the mental landscape of the protagonist was so well done. All right. Well, I guess this was a lot of fun, and I hope the listeners enjoyed our takes. Okay, so if you like the podcast, do the usual stuff, subscribe, blah blah blah, and
We've got Twitter now. You can subscribe to our Twitter account.
yeah, to see our hot takes on stuff, but also just to keep track
on Starship Troopers, giving it a 3 out of 10. I don't know if that was just to hurt me, Robert, or if that's your real opinion.
No,
do you want to know the answer, Nikki?
I do. I like it when it's good, and I like it when it hurts. So whatever.
All right, Starship Troopers. I read it once.
Okay, yeah. Me
I
too.
never want to read it again, but other Heinlein novels like Methuselah's Children, for example, I read again and again every few years.
Just quickly, just for me, why is it 3 out of 10? Why is it so bad?
I suppose the bleakness of it, this war and the fact that I don't particularly like the main characters, and I don't like the people he messes around with, and I don't there's nothing cuddly about the book at all.
Yeah, it's very dark and stark. Yeah. No, but I mean, your first point is actually contributes quite a lot to the reason why I do like it, which is that it's very, very somber. But I mean, you've read Russian literature,
Right.
most of it isn't very happy.
And on that very happy note, take care, everyone.
Thank you, listeners, and thank you, Robert, for telling me why you hate Starship Troopers.